Zxylorp adjusted his tentacles nervously as he prepared to give his report to the Galactic Council. The holographic projector hummed to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the chamber. The assembled representatives from 1,000 worlds leaned forward, their various appendages twitching with anticipation. Esteemed members of the council, Zxylorp began, his voice synthesizer struggling to maintain a steady tone. I come before you today with a report on the newly discovered species known as humans from the planet they call Earth. He paused for dramatic effect, savoring the moment. And let me tell you, it's a doozy. A ripple of laughter mixed with concerned murmurs spread through the chamber. Zxylorp's tentacles wiggled in what passed for a smile among his species. Now, I know what you're thinking, he continued, his synthesizer adopting a sarcastic tone. Oh great, another Deathworld species. What could possibly be so special about these humans? Well, buckle up, buttercups, cause we can see nothing yet. The holographic display flickered, showing images of Earth's varied ecosystems. First off, their planet is a veritable smorgasbord of ways to die. We've got scorching deserts, freezing tundras, shark-infested oceans, and don't even get me started on Australia. It's like the planet itself is trying to kill them. More laughter echoed through the chamber, punctuated by the occasional gasp of horror. But here's the kicker, Zxylorp said, his tentacles flailing for emphasis. These humans, they love it. They actively seek out danger. They climb mountains because they're there. They jump out of perfectly good flying machines for fun. They eat food so spicy it could melt the exoskeleton off a Cranxian battle beetle. The Cranxian representative chittered in indignation, but Zxylorp pressed on. Now you might be thinking, surely Zxylorp, you're exaggerating. No species could be that crazy and survive. Well, hold on to your gravitational stabilizers, because I haven't even gotten to the worst part yet. The holographic display changed, showing a map of Earth with one country highlighted in red. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted genderless entities, I present to you America. A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. America, Zxylorp continued, his voice dripping with a mixture of awe and terror, is like someone took all the most insane aspects of human culture and cranked them up to 11, and then broke off the dial and used it to deep fry their food. Images flashed across the display. Monster trucks crushing smaller vehicles, people wrestling alligators, others running with bulls, and what appeared to be a eating contest involving an unholy amount of hot dogs. Their national pastime involves hitting a small ball with a stick and then running in a square for fun. Their idea of cuisine is to take perfectly good food and find increasingly creative ways to add more grease and sugar. They have entire television channels dedicated to watching other people cook food they can't eat. The council members watched in horrified fascination as Zxylorp's presentation continued. But it gets better, he said, his sarcasm reaching new heights. These Americans have taken the human penchant for danger and turned it into an art form. They have a sport where they strap themselves to angry 1,000-pound animals and try to stay on for 8 seconds. 8 seconds. And they call it bull riding. I couldn't make this up if I tried. The holographic display showed footage of a rodeo, complete with bucking bulls and cheering crowds. And don't even get me started on their obsession with firearms, Zxylorp said, his tentacles drooping in exasperation. They have more guns than people. They celebrate their independence by blowing up small explosives in their backyards. They've turned their right to bear arms into a religion. I mean, have you seen their action movies? It's like they think bullets are a renewable resource. The council chamber erupted in a mixture of laughter and concerned muttering. Zxylorp waited for the noise to die down before continuing. Now I know what you're thinking. Surely Zxylorp, a species this reckless, can't possibly be a threat to the greater galactic community. And normally you'd be right. But here's the thing, these humans, and Americans in particular, have an uncanny ability to not just survive, but thrive in the face of adversity. The holographic display changed again, showing scenes of human achievements. Skyscrapers piercing the clouds, spacecraft launching into orbit, advanced technology that rivaled some of the council's own creations. They went from horse-drawn carriages to landing on their moon in less than a century. They've cured diseases that once wiped out millions. They've created artificial intelligence that can beat them at their own games. And they did all this while simultaneously trying to blow themselves up in increasingly creative ways. Zxylorp's tentacles waved frantically as he built to his conclusion. But here's the real kicker, the thing that keeps me up at night, staring at my ceiling with all 4 of my eyes. They don't quit. The display showed scenes of humans overcoming various disasters, rebuilding after hurricanes, coming together after terrorist attacks, adapting to a global pandemic. You throw a natural disaster at them, they'll not only survive, they'll throw a barbecue in the rubble and invite the neighbors. Economic collapse. They'll invent a new form of currency based on digital cats or something equally incomprehensible. Alien invasion. Well, let's just say I pity the poor saps who try it. They've been rehearsing that scenario in their entertainment media for decades. Zxylorp paused, letting his words sink in. The council chamber was dead silent, every representative hanging on his every word. And the Americans? They're the worst of the lot. They've turned their entire national identity into a giant come-at-me-bro the universe. So they call themselves the land of the free and the home of the brave, and by the great void they mean it. He gestured to a final image on the display. A bald eagle screeching in front of an American flag with fireworks exploding in the background. This, esteemed council members, is their national symbol. A giant, angry bird that's known for stealing food from other animals. If that doesn't sum up their attitude, I don't know what does. Zxylorp's tentacles drooped in a gesture of defeat. So in conclusion, I recommend we classify Earth as a Class X Deathworld, with America getting its own special category. Something along the lines of approach at your own risk, abandon all sanity you enter here. He looked around the chamber, taking in the shocked faces of the council members. Any questions? A lone appendage raised hesitantly at the back of the chamber. Zxylorp nodded in acknowledgement. Yes, the representative began, their voice quavering. What's your recommendation for dealing with this, America? Zxylorp's tentacles wiggled in what might have been a shrug. Well, personally, I suggest we build a wall around their solar system and make them pay for it. But knowing them, they'd probably take it as a challenge and be knocking on our doorstep within a decade, asking if we have a moment to talk about their Lord and Savior capitalism. The chamber erupted in nervous laughter. But in all seriousness, Zxylorp continued, his tone suddenly grave, I believe our best course of action is to initiate diplomatic relations. Carefully. Very, very carefully. Because mark my words, if we don't extend the hand of friendship first, they'll be out here exploring the galaxy before we know it. And trust me, nobody wants to see what happens when an American tourist gets lost in the Andromeda galaxy and asks to speak to the manager. The council members nodded solemnly, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. Oh, and one more thing, Zxylorp added, almost as an afterthought. Whatever you do, don't mention the word oil around them. Trust me on this one. As the council chamber buzzed with discussion, Zxylorp couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and excitement. Humanity was going to change the galaxy, for better or worse. And America, well, the universe had better buckle up. It was in for one hell of a ride. Akamiridat Gezibin. Idulei. Zxylorp, the mighty supreme overlord of the Zargnon Empire, stared at the view screen with a mixture of disbelief and growing horror. His mighty armada, capable of reducing entire planets to cosmic dust, hung motionless in space, surrounding the tiny blue marble called Earth. You mean to tell me, he growled, his voice like gravel in a blender, that these humans are not surrendering? His second in command, a quivering mass of tentacles named Squiggles, a name that had caused no end of ridicule in military academy, attempted to make himself as small as possible. It appears not, your mightness. In fact, they seem to be celebrating. The view screen flickered, showing scenes from around the planet. Instead of the expected panic and chaos, humans were having picnics, throwing parties. Was that a parade? Zxylorb's eyes narrowed. Explain. Squiggles gulped audibly, a feat considering his lack of a conventional throat. Well, sir, it seems that many of them believe we're not real. Not real? Zxylorp roared. We have thousands of ships surrounding their planet. We've blocked out their sun in half the hemisphere. Yes, well, Squiggles continued, his tentacles twisting nervously. Apparently, they think it's some sort of elaborate hoax. Something called viral marketing for a new science fiction movie. Zxylorp massaged his temples, all 6 of them. Surely their governments know better? Oh yes, Squiggles nodded enthusiastically, relieved to have some good news. Their governments are taking us very seriously. In fact, one country in particular seems to be leading the response. Ah, excellent, Zxylorp said, leaning back in his throne. Let me guess, China? Russia? Perhaps that quaint little island that used to have an empire. Squiggles shook his head, or at least the part of him that passed for a head. No, sir. It's America. Like America. Zxylorp froze. America. The one from Zxylorp's report? The land of hold my beer and watch this? Squiggles nodded miserably. Well, Zxylorp said, trying to sound optimistic, surely they're preparing their defenses, cowering in fear. The view screen changed again, showing scenes from across America. People were firing guns into the air, waving flags, and was that a barbecue? I'm afraid not, sir, Squiggles said. They seem to be celebrating. They're calling it Independence Day 2, Electric Boogaloo. And Zxylorp stared at the screen in disbelief. Are they grilling? In the shadow of our invasion fleet? Yes, sir. Apparently, they've decided that if the world is ending, they're going to go out with a bang and a belly full of burgers. The supreme overlord of the Zargnon Empire, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, felt a headache coming on. What about their military? Surely they're mounting some kind of defense? Squiggles hesitated. Well, sir, their military is mobilizing, but what? But it seems a significant portion of their population believes they can handle the situation themselves. They keep referring to something called the Second Amendment and insisting that they've been preparing for this their whole lives. The view screen showed images of humans standing on their roofs with an alarming array of firearms, many of them wearing tin-foil hats. Some held signs that read, "Aliens go home and we will not go quietly into the night." Sarblak slumped in his throne. Do they really think their primitive weapons can harm our advanced technology? When Squiggles shifted uncomfortably. About that, sir. Our intelligence suggests that some of their primitive weapons are alarmingly effective. Apparently, they've been innovating in weapons technology at an unprecedented rate, something about a military-industrial complex. Surely we can simply overwhelm them with our superior numbers. Sarblak asked, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. Normally, yes, Squiggles agreed. But there's a complication. You see, the Americans have this concept called gun ownership per capita, and well, let's just say the numbers are a bit scary. Sarblak buried his face in his hands. Please tell me there's some good news. Squiggles brightened. Oh yes, it seems they're planning a big welcome for us. Something about a Super Bowl halftime show scale event. They're calling it The Day the Earth Stood Still. Why all? The Supreme Overlord looked up sharply. A trap? No sir, an actual welcome, with fireworks, and something called deep-fried Oreos. Sarblak stared at his second-in-command for a long moment. Then he stood up abruptly. Squiggles, send a message to the fleet. We're leaving. Squiggles blinked all 7 of his eyes in surprise. Leaving? But sir, our invasion is cancelled. Sarblak said firmly. I've conquered 1,000 worlds, Squiggles, and I know a losing battle when I see one. If we stay, best case scenario, we end up as the punchline in their jokes for the next century. Worst case, well, I don't want to think about the worst case. But sir, our reputation will recover. Sarblak interrupted. We'll say it was all an elaborate test to see if they were worthy of joining the galactic community or something, but we are not, under any circumstances, engaging with that. He waved a hand at the view screen, which now showed a group of humans attempting to lasso one of the smaller scout ships. As the mighty Zargnon Armada began to retreat, leaving behind a very confused planet Earth, Sarblak turned to his second-in-command. Squiggles, do me a favor. Remind me to send a gift basket to Zxylorp. That mad tentacled bastard tried to warn us. Squiggles nodded, making a note in his datapad. What should we put in the gift basket, sir? Sarblak thought for a moment. Something strong. Very, very strong. I have a feeling he's going to need it. He paused, then added, and Squiggles, add a note, you were right about the oil? As the last of the Zargnon ships disappeared into hyperspace, the people of Earth were left to wonder if it had all been a dream, a hoax, or the best darned 4th of July celebration in history. In America, sales of tin foil reached record highs. Gun ownership somehow managed to increase even further, and a new national holiday was proposed, Alien Appreciation Day. The fact that no one could quite agree on whether the aliens had been real or not only added to the festive atmosphere. Meanwhile, in a small diner in Roswell, New Mexico, an oddly tentacled tourist in an ill-fitting human suit sat at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee and muttering to himself. I told them, Zxylorp said, shaking his head like appendage. I told them, but did they listen? No, it's just one planet, Zxylorp. How bad could it be, Zxylorp? Huh. The waitress, a kind-faced woman named Betty who'd seen her fair share of oddities in Roswell, refilled his cup. Rough day, hon? Zxylorp looked up, his holographic human eyes meeting hers. You have no idea, Betty. No idea at all. Betty smiled sympathetically. Well, hon, whatever it is, I'm sure it ain't as bad as all that. I want to talk about it. Zxylorp sighed, a sound like air escaping from a punctured balloon. Let's just say I'm in intergalactic public relations and I've got a real doozy of a client. Oh, sounds exciting, Betty said, leaning on the counter. Anyone I might have heard of. Zxylorp chuckled mirthlessly. Oh, I'd say so. Ever heard of a little planet called Earth? Betty's eyes widened. Earth? You mean like us? The very same, Zxylorp nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. Specifically, I'm in charge of, how do you humans put it? Ah yes, damage control for your interactions with the wider galactic community. Betty blinked, processing this information with remarkable calm. Well, I'll be. So those aliens last month weren't just some fancy light show? Light show. Zxylorp scoffed. That was the Zargnon Empire's invasion fleet. Well, attempted invasion fleet. They didn't quite know what they were getting into. Invasion? Betty frowned. but nothing happened. Well, except for that wild party in Times Square, and I heard they had some pretty spectacular fireworks over in China. Zxylorp's holographic face managed to convey a mix of exasperation and amusement. Exactly, you humans, especially you Americans, managed to mistake a full-scale alien invasion for a party. Do you have any idea how that looks to the rest of the galaxy? Betty shrugged. Sounds like a good time to me. You want some pie with that coffee? You look like you could use it. Sure, why not? Zxylorp said, his tentacles wiggling beneath his human disguise. Might as well embrace the local cuisine while I'm here. As Betty bustled off to fetch the pie, the bell over the diner door jingled. A man walked in, dressed in full cowboy regalia, complete with spurs that jangled with every step. He plopped himself down on the stool next to Zxylorp. Howdy, partner, the cowboy said, tipping his hat. Name's Buck. Buck Wild. Couldn't help but overhear you talking about them aliens. Zxylorp turned slowly, eyeing the newcomer warily. Oh, and what's your take on the situation, Mr. Wild? Buck grinned, revealing a gold tooth that glinted in the diner's fluorescent lighting. Well, I'll tell you what. Them aliens picked the wrong planet to mess with, that's for sure, and they sure as shootin' picked the wrong country. Is that so? Zxylorp asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Please enlighten me. Well, you see, Buck began, warming to his subject, we Americans, we've been preparing for this day since forever. Heck, half the folks in my town got underground bunkers stocked with enough ammo and beef jerky to last till kingdom come. Zxylorp nodded slowly. Yes, I'm aware of your country's unique approach to emergency preparedness. Unique? Buck laughed. Son, we wrote the book on it. Why, my cousin Jeb's got himself a homemade EMP device, just in case them aliens fancy electronic warfare. Fascinating, Zxylorp muttered, wondering if it was too late to request a transfer to a nice, quiet desk job in the Galactic Corps. Betty returned with a slice of apple pie, setting it down in front of Zxylorp. Here you go, honorable best pie this side of the Milky Way, if I do say so myself. I'm sure it is, Zxylorp said, poking at it cautiously with his fork. Say, Buck said, eyeing Zxylorp's barely touched coffee, you ain't from around here, are you? Zxylorp froze mid-bite. What makes you say that? Buck shrugged. Well, for starters, you ain't touched that coffee since it cooled down. No red-blooded American lets good diner coffee go to waste. I'm on a special diet, Zxylorp said quickly. Aha, Buck nodded, clearly unconvinced. And I suppose the diet's also why you're sweating like a pig in a bacon factory. In an air-conditioned diner? Zxylorp realized with horror that his holographic disguise was starting to glitch, little shivers of static revealing glimpses of his true tentacled form. I can explain, he began, but Buck cut him off with a hearty laugh. No need, partner, Buck said, clapping Zxylorp on what he hoped was a shoulder. We get all types here in Roswell. Heck, my sister-in-law's second cousin twice removed swears he's half Venusian on his mother's side. You not alarmed? Zxylorp asked, bewildered. Buck shrugged. Shoot, after what happened last month, ain't much that can alarm us folks anymore. Besides, any alien that's willing to sit down and share a slice of Betty's apple pie can't be all bad in my book. Betty nodded in agreement. That's right, you just eat up, sugar. Sounds like you've had yourself quite the day. Zxylorp looked from Buck to Betty and back again, then down at his slice of pie. Slowly, he began to laugh, a sound like bubbles percolating through thick mud. You know, he said, shaking his head in wonder, I think I'm starting to understand why the Zargnon Empire ran away with their tentacles between their legs. You humans, especially you Americans, you're something else. Darn tootin', Buck agreed, raising his coffee mug in a toast. To Earth, the Deathworld that likes to party, and to America, the aliens' worst nightmare. As the unlikely trio clinked their mugs together, Zxylorp couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this assignment wasn't going to be so bad after all. Terrifying, yes. Unpredictable, absolutely, but boring. Never. And as he took his first bite of real, honest-to-goodness American apple pie, Zxylorp made a mental note. Next time the Galactic Council asked for volunteers for a suicide mission, he'd think twice before raising his tentacle. After all, there were worse fates than being stationed on Earth, like being the poor sap who had to explain to the Zargnon Emperor why his invasion fleet came home with a severe case of the red, white, and blues.